thanks for clicking on this video. So today we're going to be looking at what are, in my opinion, the 3 worst seasons to come out of Fortnite. So I don't want to waste your time, but if you do enjoy, please consider leaving a like and subscribing. And with all that being said, let's head straight into it. So the first chapter I want to mention, this is arguably the worst season, but I wanted to get it out of the way first, and that is Chapter 4, Season 3. This is arguably the worst season to come out of Fortnite in general. Now, there are a few reasons why I believe this to be the case. So, the first thing I want to talk about is the skins, or basically the Battle Pass. The Battle Pass for this season was one of the weakest we've seen, I feel. The theme they were going with the story as well, just didn't really connect with me. I know that's the case with a lot of people as well. It isn't scored very well in comparison to other seasons of Fortnite. But I think the Battle Pass was just a little underwhelming. I don't think it was worth buying, and it's just a bit of a waste of money, really, if you bought it. Now, if you do enjoy this season and you enjoyed the Battle Pass, obviously it's not a waste for you, and I'm happy if you enjoyed this season. But I feel like some other factors, like how the map looks, just contributed to it just not being a very fun season. As I just said, the map, I feel like it was very bland. There wasn't much going on, and it's pretty different from the rest of the seasons, which you could argue is a positive and a negative, but I would say it was more of a negative in this instance because the whole season just felt pretty bland and overall just not a very fun experience. Now I want to have a look at Chapter 3, Season 4. Not to be confused with the last one we just talked about, Chapter 4, Season 3. This one, to me, has some similar issues to the previous entry in this video, but I think that this one overall was just not a disaster, but it was just a little bit disappointing. I think that especially the final event for this series just wasn't great. It was underwhelming, and I feel like this season just didn't have as much effort put into it. And you can notice now, it's a trend with Fortnite now, that initially their chapters were lasting pretty long. They went up to like 10 seasons, 5, 6 seasons. Now you saw with the last Chapter 4, I'm pretty sure they only did 3 parts. So they're slowing it down a little bit now. They're ending the chapters and trying to tell a whole new story. And arguably that is a good decision, because I feel like here the end event was just very disappointing. I don't think the Battle Pass was all that great either. It's just it's an underwhelming follow-up to the previous season, which I thought was pretty solid. Not amazing, but it was pretty alright. Chapter 3 as a whole, you could argue, was pretty underwhelming. But this one, in my opinion at least, was the most underwhelming chapter. So now, just before we get to the number 1 spot, I want to look at a couple of seasons that I feel were pretty weak and arguably could have been on this list if I'd made it a top 5. So the first one I wanted to talk about is Season 1. Now, this one's a bit of a cop-out because it was the first one, but there was no Battle Pass. It was a very simplistic game, and there wasn't a lot to offer. Even though it was a very fun game, there wasn't anything to, I guess, keep players coming back aside from just the fun factor. And what we're basing the seasons on is things like the map, the skins, events, the Battle Pass especially. And because this one was lacking one, I thought it a little unfair to include it, but I also thought I should mention it as one of the weaker seasons. Now, Season X is one I wanted to talk about as well. The end to Chapter 1, it is pretty divisive, I found. I think the Battle Pass was okay. I don't mind the themes from it. The skins were okay. I'm pretty sure this was the season that had mechs and things like that as well. If you weren't a fan of planes and stuff in Season 7, you probably weren't a big fan of this. This season I didn't include because I don't think it's in the top 3 worst, but it is pretty divisive, which is why I wanted to mention it here. So another one I wanted to look at is Chapter 3, Season 3. This one is alright. I'm only including it here because this is probably the chapter I played the least. I just didn't find it very enticing, very entertaining. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. I've heard some people have good experiences with this season, which again is why I didn't actually include it in the worst 3. I did also very quickly just want to mention Season 7 because of the introduction of planes. I know a lot of people didn't like planes in the game. Personally, I actually didn't mind it, so again, that is why I didn't include it in the actual list. But I wanted to mention it here because I know a majority, or at least sort of 50-50 of the fan base weren't too big on the introduction. So I just wanted to mention that here. And now let's head over to the number one spot. So in the number one spot for the worst season to come out of Fortnite, I have Chapter 2 Season 6 Primal. This season is probably the most boring season that they put out. It has similar issues to the other season that I had at the number 3 spot, which is that I find it very, very boring and very lackluster. I feel like the map isn't that great. It's pretty boring as well. Again, Battle Pass, not really worth it. I feel like the skins that they were offering aren't really that interesting, at least in comparison to skins we've seen them put out before in Battle Passes. Now, this season isn't necessarily all bad. I think there are some cool little elements to it. Even though the map is boring, I think there are some cool locations, which can be said about basically every season, really. And this season is probably, in my opinion, just the most forgettable season that Epic have ever put out. The biggest issues for me are, as I said, the map is pretty weak, although it has some good locations, and the Battle Pass is just forgettable, not great, and I also feel like the story here is the weakest that Fortnite has probably ever seen. I just don't feel like it is a natural follow-up to the previous season, and I feel like overall it was just a little disappointing. So with that all being said, guys, let me know what you think. Do you think any of these seasons are actually the worst? Do you think that all three of mine are actually some of the best that you've played? Let me know in the comments. With all that being said, everyone, thank you so much for watching this video, especially if you watched all the way to the end. If you did enjoy, please consider leaving a like and subscribing. It would mean a ton to me. I hope you have a great day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Thanks, everyone.